Hi, this is my video tutorial based on the program Adobe Photoshop CS6. In this tutorial, I'm just going to be explaining a little bit about the basics of the layout of Adobe Photoshop and some of the tools that are often used in Adobe Photoshop, as well as a little bit of further explanation on how to use the clone stamp tool and further explanation of how to add a inner shadow and a bevel effect to an image. So let's get started. So I'm using a Mac, and I'm just going to go down here and open up Adobe Photoshop CS6. And this is what will open. And this is just going to be your basic layout. Here, so it's called a canvas, and this is where your image and all your main editing will appear. Over here to the right hand side is the layers panel, which will basically give you all the text layers, all of the image layers. So when you select a specific layer, you can only edit that layer. So it kind of allows things to be organized. Up here is some adjustments or effects. There's a histogram, there's a color balance, there's a brightness and contrast. These are kind of nice if you want to fix a photo in a quick fashion. Over here to the left hand side is your tools panel. These are all the different tools you can use in Adobe Photoshop, and I'll go into a little bit of explanation of those a little bit later. So right now we're just going to open up a new image and put it in here for editing. So there's in Photoshop there's several ways to do many different things. So just keep that in mind when we're doing this. So in this gray area here, just double click, and then this will pop up and you'll be able to select which image you would like to place. So I'm going to open up this image, and there is the image that we're going to be working with today. So these are the basic tools over here to the left hand side. This is your general select tool. If it's just something you want to select or move around, this is going to be your go-to tool. And this is a select tool. There's a rectangular marquee tool. There's an elliptical tool. There's a single row marquee tool and a single column marquee tool. These are all basically, again, for selection, but more in a shape type of context. And here we have the magnetic lasso tool, which basically, once you select an area that you would like to edit or take out of an image, the lasso tool follows that color pattern and that shape and texture, and it's kind of like a self-guidance way of getting something out of an image. The lasso tool is not as self-guided. It doesn't magnetize itself to a specific color, or it doesn't try and guess where you would like to put the lasso. This is the magic wand tool, which is quite frequently used in Photoshop. If you click anywhere on the image here, it's going to select other colors that it thinks matches that. So then you can delete specific things from the image, you can add things back in, you can recolor some of these, like I can make these green if I want, that sort of thing. This is the crop tool, and it's pretty explanatory. It just crops the image to a certain size that you wish. This is the eyedrop tool. If you want to select a color, you just pick the area that you would like to select, and it'll show up here in your color swatch down here in the bottom. So you can match that color if you're wanting to do a text color and you want the text color to match, let's say, one of the inside of these flowers. It'll put your color right down here at the bottom. And this is a clone stamp tool, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And it basically, you select a part of the image and you're able to copy it and put it in other areas of the image. And I'll explain how that could be used. Here we have an eraser tool. It's basically self-explanatory. It just erases an area. A Up here, you can make the brush size a bit larger if you wish. So we can go all the way up to 5,000, which is pretty large, as you can see. Or we could go all the way down to a size 1 pixel, so that's pretty small. Usually the average is somewhere around here. If you're just doing, minor work, you can also zoom in and use a brush, and you can also change what your brush looks like or what effect you have on the brush, so that's also available as well. Here we have the paint bucket tool. It basically just takes a whole area and just paints it the same exact color. It's pretty self-explanatory. Down here we have the text tool. We can use this tool to select an area anywhere on this image to add our own text. And down here we just have the basic shape tool, which allows you to make different shapes and different lines. So we can get started in working with the clone stamp tool. So we go here, over back to the clone stamp tool, and select that. So what we do is we press Control, Option, and you select the area that you would like to copy. So right now I've taken a copy of the flower here, so as you can see it over in this selection area. So let's just say I want to make this flower more prominent and a little bit more voluptuous here. I would just take this and I would just keep selecting areas around the flower to copy. And put back in. This is especially useful if you have an old photo and it's a little bit damaged and you want to fix up the background and such. This is a great tool to use if you want to add things back in, or if there's a mistake. It can be used to fix blemishes. You can take a piece of someone's skin and then fix those red spots or those markings. So here we've just made this flower a little bit larger with the clone stamp tool. We can go over here, we can take different parts of leaves and we can make the leaves look a little bit more fuller. So you can do that as well. The other thing we're going to show in this tutorial is how to add an inner shadow. So what you're going to do is you're going to come over here to this layer. You're going to double click on it. And then this layer style sheet is going to pop up. You can do all kinds of different effects in Photoshop, but today we're just going to explore the bevel and emboss and the inner shadow. So I'm going to just click this check mark to add a bevel and emboss. And as you can see, it already appears on this image as an effect. So if you just click on the elements of that effect, you can choose what kind of bevel you would want. You can do an emboss, you can do an outer bevel, which doesn't really show up on this particular image. You can do an inner bevel. You can also select how deep you want the bevel to go as well. So if you want a really dramatic bevel and edge around it, you can do a higher depth. If not, you can do a depth with on the lower number %. And again, here we can select the contour, which makes the bevel more extreme and more noticeable. We can even edit the angle of the bevel. So I want mine to go back there. And again, you can just kind of play around with this, and it's kind of interesting all the different ways you can do the different effects. So then I'm going to add my inner shadow, which I'm going to select this box. I'm going to select the effect. And here, as you can already tell, you can kind of see it around the edges here. Is my inner shadow. So I'm going to make my inner shadow go this way, so it's a bit more noticeable. You can also raise and lower the opacity to make it less or more noticeable depending on your liking in the image. I can choose how distant I want the effect to be. I can choose the size of the inner shadow. I can also change the color as well. and then I hit OK, and then these effects stick with this image. If you want these effects to be taken off, you just double click again here, and then uncheck these selections. Again, I hope you have enjoyed this little short tutorial about Adobe Photoshop and some of the tools that can be used with it.